Hello Canada, welcome back to another edition of the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm your host, Alias Tagai. Well, we got a few things we're going to go over here today, but I want to start off with this absolutely amazing interview that Poilievre does with one of my favorite Canadians of our time. And his name is Ellis Ross. And what he has done, what he has accomplished for his nation and others along the route for this LNG gas line, bringing all of these nations true prosperity, not just prosperity, trying to rip themselves away from the federalist Canada, the socialist Canada, tearing apart the Indian Act, although they could never remove it because it's federal law. They use the resource industry to do it for them. And now, I've mentioned him on a lot of my previous episodes. Like I said, I'd love to meet the guy, shake his hand. Actually, I give the guy a hug for what he has done, how he has uplifted so many people within his communities. But not just that. Other nations around Canada, and not enough, with just not enough, but some other nations have seen what he has done and are now starting to realize we got some serious issues, and it starts with the federal government. And in order for us to do better for us, we need to remove ourselves from them. Now, he's not a separatist by any means. I've never heard him say or talk anything like that. And he ran for the Conservatives and he won. He's now an MP. And beforehand, he's a liberal. He's an old school liberal. Back when the liberals actually had morals and dignity. They weren't socialists and fascists. But back then, conservatives and liberals worked together. Not like today. With the help of the propaganda machine, they've tore them apart into two completely different sects. Which was a real good thing, to be honest. Now, not because the socialist fascists are in power, but it really is bringing more and more people's attention to the fact of how our country is being taken over by socialism. And the only way you can remove yourself, and the West is working on this right now in a drastic measure that can't come sooner than later, to just cut ties. And he did what was in his best interest through law, through elections, through his people, and other nations along the route, to slowly start to dissolve all of the old, horrible welfare state reserve ideas and uplift them into a successful, prospering people, which is what they were before Canada created all of these Indian Act and all the rest of this crap. And like, for those of you that don't know, it was a liquidation. It was a replacement, and it would go replacement theory, but it truly it was. They just rather breed them out. So you have bloodlines where if the mother was what you would call a pure Indigenous woman, and she married a white guy, the kids, their statuses were cut or lost. But the males could marry white, and no problem, kids would keep. So it just like right now there's havoc. Who's native and who's not? So one person is more native than another. They completely just diluted the entire system. This is all just shit. It's crap. Now, Poilievre doing this is a great little format for him to actually sit down and do his own podcast. Theoretically, it's what he's doing, is a video cast. But highlighting the careers of all of the individuals and showing all of the people around Canada how it's not just conservative. The Conservative Party of today is a liberal party. They're a small L, small c. They're actually a complete band of people who have come together from both sides, liberal and conservative, and they're just conservatives now. They've moved so far left. The conservatives definitely aren't conservative. They're small c. Now, I'm going to only play a short clip of this. I urge you, I put all of my links down below. Watch this interview in its entirety. It is just over 30 minutes, 31 minutes long. Worth every minute. You really get to understand him, and the best part is you get to see the reality, the humanity that is Pierre Poilievre. When we're done with that, we're going to move on. There's like a new fossils that have been found that's kind of rewriting history. 4,000 people displaced in Saskatchewan. Mo's like pleading for people, please, enough fires. Like, wow, this is getting crazy. And by the way, not a single one has been proven to have not been human. They're all human. They're all human cause people. This is it's just so mad, just so frustrating. And then there's also an arrest of a guy here, 35-year-old guy who was grabbing kids and filming them. Kind of scary, actually very scary. But let's just get started with this Poilievre interview. And like I said, Eli Ross, this guy is an amazing human. And I'm so glad that he won a seat and is sitting in the Conservative Party.
And so you went to Kitimat. And what, did you live there throughout your entire childhood?
Yeah, basically. Yeah. I moved away as a young man. My wife basically wanted to go get an education, so I moved to Prince George for a while.
Yeah.
Because there's no housing on reserve or no jobs, I actually stayed away from our community for the better part of 15 years. And that's really how I shaped my political views, because I really struggled as a young man trying to find a job. And so I figured I didn't want anybody to go through what I went through.
So did that motivate you to become someone who fights for employment and job opportunities?
Not until I figured out what it meant to be an elected councillor.
Okay.
Because initially when I got in, I was a coach of a basketball team, and I thought I could take my council's vast resources and fund my basketball teams, only to find out my council had no money. There was so much debt. They couldn't even think about funding anything else outside of their debt and their program. So it was kind of awakening to me to figure out not only what my own band was going through, but what many bands go through all across Canada.
So you had to dig the band out of that debt?
Yeah, I was a councillor at the time. It was my chief and council at the time. That was their priority, digging out of debt, as well as trying to chart out a new future.
And how did you do that?
Well, we had a chief councillor that was economic development oriented, but also had an idea that we should utilize the Haida court case of 2004, meaning the Crown's duty to consult and accommodate First Nations on their rights and title. And so we developed that over the years and developed a relationship with the federal government, provincial government, at a time when nobody understood what that meant.
And when did you become the chief counselor?
2011.
Okay.
And then got acclaimed in 2013.
Because that was the exact time that consortium was putting together the LNG Canada plan.
That's right.
And this is really like an absolutely monstrous economic project. It included the Coastal GasLink pipeline from Alberta all the way to Kitimat, and then this enormous liquefaction plant, which I think we visited together about 2 years ago or so, that liquefies and then will eventually ship off gas to Asia and allow us to arbitrage the difference between the North American price for gas, which I think is it's around $3 per million metric British thermal units in Canada, but I think it's something like $12 in Asia. So basically, it's 4 times higher in
Yes.
Asia than it is here. You could buy something for 3 and sell it for 12, and do that billions of times. You make a lot of money pretty quick, don't you?
Well, who's got the better deal in that equation, right? It's not us. But that was one of the motivating factors behind us, not just to lift our people out of poverty, which we accomplished, but also looking at the global issues around emissions for Asia, Africa, Europe, United States. And that was always our belief that not only are we doing this for the region, we're doing it for the globe.
Right. Well, the Fraser Institute was out with a report just the other day showing that if Canada were to double its natural gas production and send all of the excess to China and India, by displacing dirtier coal, it would actually reduce emissions by about 89% of the total emissions of all of Canada.
Yes.
And something like 600 million tons of emissions would be avoided by displacing dirty coal with clean Canadian gas. LNG Canada is the starting point for that. You've got another project, I think it's called Cedar.
Cedar, that was an agreement that we negotiated with LNG Canada to utilize capacity on their existing pipeline, the Coastal GasLink,
Okay.
so we could build our own.
So you're going to have yet another liquefaction plant for
Yes,
that.
a floating, but it'll be under the pipeline capacity.
So
that's
it'll
already
actually
approved.
float. It'll float on the...
It'll be floating.
Where will that be? Is it in Kitimat as well?
In Kitimat, at the head of Douglas Channel, just below LNG Canada.
Okay.
And it was land that we acquired almost like 9 years ago. We purchased it, and we kept it in fee simple status because we thought business like certainty. So we don't want to reinvent the wheel with environmental laws or taxation laws. Let's just utilize what's in place for Canada and BC already. Industry loved that. They came in. Yes, we love that idea.
Amazing. And so this floating contraption will receive the gas, compress and cool it, turn it into a liquid. A big tanker will come along. That tanker will be injected with the gas. It'll be filled up and then shipped off to Asia.
Exactly.
Okay. And what is this, like, you grew up in Kitimat. It must be a hell of a lot different now than when you were a kid.
Oh, night and day. Night and day, especially as an elected leader. Because early on in my elected career as a councillor, I realized, number one, I had no money. Number two, we were restricted by the Indian Act. And I was raised by 2 parents that went to residential school. They were sent by their parents. But I was always taught to be independent, not to ask for any help. So when I realized part of my job was to go to Ottawa to ask for money, I refused. But I did need something to get our people employed, get them out of poverty, and to get our council closer to being an independent government working model.
Now, I'm going to rewind that. I want you to listen to that one more time. This guy is just so incredible. I'm telling you, he's a hero of mine. He really is. He saw the laws. He realized in order to bring his people out of poverty, he needed to remove the federal government from him, but he couldn't do it by law. So he used those existing laws with the court case that was won in order for them to enact a treaty right, which is the right to be able to negotiate, sit, and barter at the table as an equal. He got a bunch of other nations involved. Through this, the government was stuck because it didn't matter how many honkies were laying down in front of traffic in Vancouver. The government couldn't fight when all of these elected individuals representing all of these nations, right from where the gas is produced to where it was going to be sold. And the fact that he actually found ways within the laws to sign a deal that the gas company realized this would be successful and there would be no way for the government to stop it. Now, the Liberals tried, but they couldn't. because all of this had been signed already. He had had the ball rolling, and he used every means possible within Confederacy to do so. But listen to how he talks about this disgusting thing called the Indian Act. Now, there are people out there that are like screaming. They were like, "You can't tear the Indian Act," and others are like, "What? The Indian Act's the worst thing to ever happen to the Indigenous people." I'm going to play it again. Listen very carefully to the way he words this on how he was successful, not just in taking the poverty, not just in bringing down global emissions and having a cleaner product out. The end means was removing himself and his people from having to go to the government in poverty, in debt, in slums, to beg for money, and he refused to lower himself to that. And he stepped back, and that's how him and all of these other elected officials for all of these different nations said, "Hey, we can do it if we do this and we do this and we do this." And the most important part was removing themselves. They can't get rid of the act, but by uplifting their people, it becomes obsolete.
Parents that went to residential school, they were sent by their parents. But I was always taught to be independent, not to ask for any help. So when I realized part of my job was to go to Ottawa to ask for money, I refused. But I did need something to get our people employed, get them out of poverty, and to get our council closer to being an independent government working model. And everything I saw up to date had failed. And so I was trying to think, what do I do next? So economic development in a roundabout way came to be the answer. And it's succeeded in so many different ways that I never imagined. I mean, the people determining their own future, the council determining their own future, and the Indian Act becoming less and less relevant. It's just beyond my wildest dreams.
And can we replicate it in other places? Yeah. How do we do that?
Well, when I go to talk to First Nations, I talk to them and tell them, you got to know what you want. You have to know what you want. And ultimately, if you do want independence, you do want a future for your kids and your grandkids, you're going to have to embrace change.
Change.
And change is not easy. And for that, you're going to have to elect the leadership or select your leadership that can reflect what you really want.
So all of those nations in all, like northern Saskatchewan and Ontario, and you guys have really got to get off this socialist bandwagon, because it's that philosophy that has been destroying your peoples. And if your chiefs are the ones out there screaming to shut down all of these resource activities, all of this production, elect better ones. Nobody should be born better than anybody else. Born chiefs are like born kings. Not interested. Punt them. Elect people who will uplift the entire nation. Those are the people you need. You need a lot more of this type of a person.
It's not easy. It wasn't easy for us. I mean, we started in 2004 with this idea, and it was very painful to get to the point where we are today, and nobody really remembers those days. But it was worth it to see the younger generation not knowing or caring about the Indian Act.
Right?
Not knowing what it's like to be on welfare, like I know how, or what it's like to collect unemployment insurance annually, like I know how. It's a completely different world. And I've always said that if my kids and my grandkids don't know anything about the Indian Act or don't know anything about poverty or welfare, then my generation did their job well.
Right.
You did.
They should be addressing different issues in their lifetime.
So you're basically breaking the control and bureaucracy that held the community down. The control from Ottawa, I mean to say.
Yes.
That held the community down for so long. Now you're breaking that and replacing it with an independence that comes from resource development jobs opportunity.
Without a doubt. And it branches out from there. I'm talking to so many different leaders now. And Billy Moran,
Yes.
your other MP,
Yeah.
they've advanced so far. They've gone
Enoch.
beyond what we've done.
They're on Enoch. I mean, he was the chief there. He inherited a huge debt.
Huge debt.
And a high unemployment rate, and he balanced the budget. He paid down a bunch of the debt, and he got the unemployment down to almost nothing.
Yeah.
So those are the stories we want to replicate. He's serving now as a Conservative member of Parliament near Edmonton and our shadow minister for Indigenous issues. And that's our agenda, is to unlock real economic opportunity. My view is that First Nations people can be the richest in the entire world. Because the resources we have are literally boundless. I mean, we can't even begin to produce them all. Even if we were operating on full throttle with the government out of the way and the perfect policies and the best business, we have so many resources we could never produce them all. We would never run out. And First Nations people can be among the biggest beneficiaries, if not the biggest. And so we can replicate the story you had over and over and over again.
And you know, it's probably the best form of reconciliation I've ever seen, especially when people use terms like economic reconciliation. When you're not only you're closing the gap in terms of standard of living between First Nations and non-First Nations, but if you come to Kitimat, you'll see everybody succeeded.
Mm-hmm.
Non-First Nations and First Nations alike, even First Nations from different territories, came in, took part. There was enough to go around, and so it uplifted everybody. And I always thought that reconciliation, that is a definition of reconciliation where there's no winners and losers.
Exactly.
Everybody benefits, including the province, including the country,
And that's what you're seeing right now in your community.
without a doubt.
So what are the changes that need to happen at the federal level for this to happen again and again?
Well, get some of those bureaucratic rules out of the way, all those policies that restrict it, that restrict development. I mean, talk to First Nations that have this vision, not only the vision to get their own people out of poverty, but also have a vision for building the country. I mean, I think the one thing that I've seen in the last year that I've never seen before, the country realized they have to come together given what happened down in the United States with Mr. President Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never seen that before. And I think it's about time that Canada really thought about their place in the geoeconomics of the world. I mean, you can't help but think what Russia's doing, what China's doing, what the United States is doing. Where do we fit in? And that's mainly why I want to join the Conservative Party.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to see this country rebuilt the way the people envisioned it 100 years ago, 200 years ago, complete with freedoms, economic freedoms, independence. We need a place in the world. We can't just be playing second fiddle to the United States. We need them, of course, but we need a more diverse economy if we want to survive.
This guy is amazing. I urge you, please, watch the entire video, the entire interview. I can't brag up this guy enough. What he has done, how he thinks, and what he grew up through, you just have to have the utmost respect. And when you hear him talk, even when there's an argumentative point being made, he has such a Canadian demeanor to him. He's not like this new cult, this new socialist liberal cult, where you hit them with the fact and they scream and you're a racist and this is what we need. To the point where there is no Indian, there is no white man, there is no Indigenous, there is Canada, there are Canadians. Everybody has the equality, the freedom, from the gun laws to the regulations, the restrictions, then throw in the old school of the Indian Act and some of the other things. The federal government is destroying the way of life for the Indigenous. And the kicker to that entire conversation, to the entirety of what I had just said, is you don't need to have Indigenous on there. because there are hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of Canadians that don't have a card, that live the same way in remote areas, and some not remote, that are having those same freedoms removed. And now they're going after freedom of speech. They're going to finish taking the guns. That's their goal. They are a full-fledged fascist government. They're socialist already, without a doubt, but I say it over and over. They're opening the door to fascism. They're doing it slowly, and with the help of propaganda, they're doing it quietly. And people are not aware of how many rights they are taking away. And you can never have a productive society or a successful country with those types of rules. Name one country that socialism has worked in, that it hasn't caused the deaths of hundreds or millions of people. It doesn't exist. That's what made the United States the country it is today, is that they wrote it in law. And it gets bombarded every year by different politicians, and thank God that they've held on to those rights, to that Constitution. Whereas here in Canada, we had a hardcore socialist who said, I'm going to recreate a Constitution, and somehow talked Canadians into thinking that you could have a socialist recreate a Constitution that removes freedoms, and then give you these beautiful terms, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, where the entire document isn't worth the paper it's printed on. That was proven with the Freedom Convoy. That's proven with all of the scandals. Trudeau isn't even in jail. Shit, he didn't even get booted out of his seat after the SNC-Lavalin scandal. That's the highest rule any federal politician could do. That's one of the biggest laws that a prime minister should never break. He broke it. Please watch this video in its entirety. It's like I said, I can't talk him up anymore. Ellis is just an amazing person. Now we're gonna move on to some other news and get caught up here.
The evolution of spiders, crabs, and early insects can be examined by ancient fossils. A search in BC by Manitoba Museum researcher has uncovered a new fossil species that's estimated to be more than 500 million years old. Joining us now to tell us more about this fascinating discovery is Manitoba Museum Curator of Paleontology and Geology, Joe Moisiak. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us. Now, you've done some searches on site, but you also did some searches at the Manitoba Museum vaults, basically looking at specimens that have been collected for years that have never been examined before, right?
That's right. So some of these fossils that were found were actually discovered many decades ago, and they've rested in museum collections, and particularly at the Royal Ontario Museum, which is where I was based previously.
Okay.
And then other specimens were found more recently. So some work that I've done with collaborators at the Burgess Shale uncovered specimens at new sites at the Burgess Shale since about 2014.
Okay, so the Burgess Shale is in BC. And what is shale? What is it exactly, and why is it prime and filled with specimens and fossils?
So shale is a rock that's made up of sediment, so little grains of minerals, like clays.
Okay.
And so you can find it forming at the bottom of oceans and lakes. And it's a great place to find fossils because all sorts of organisms live in those environments.
So this would have been an ancient clay bottom of either an ocean or a river in the past.
That's right. So even though these fossils are now found high in the Rocky Mountains in BC, they were once deposited at the bottom of a deep ocean.
That is so cool. Okay, so you did look at these. They're called arthropods. They look like shrimp, right? Is that what they're like? Explain to me what they're like.
So this new species, we call it Musura fentani. And it's a member of the larger group of animals that we call the arthropods that today includes shrimp and spiders and insects.
Okay.
So they're actually the most diverse group of animals on Earth today. They make up something like 80% of known species.
Okay, so they would have to have sort of a protective shield, right? That's
Right.
what they.
You can imagine it like wearing a suit of armor. So it's made up of jointed pieces of armor.
So you found some in BC, and then you found some in the drawers at the Manitoba Museum, and they're the same species to each other, right?
That's right. So some of these collections were made a long time ago. Some of the first specimens that were found were probably viewed sort of as enigmatic, weird one-offs that
Okay.
couldn't necessarily be categorized at that time. And so it's only later and through further research and understanding of other related forms of fossils that we've understood the significance of these ones.
You think they're about 500 million years old.
That's right. So the Burgess Shale is about 506 million years old, which puts it at a time called the Cambrian period. And that's a very significant period in Earth's history because it's actually the time when we see the emergence of essentially all of the major animal body plans that are still with us today.
Okay, and so when you look at this, what makes it different from other specimens? Why is it something you've never seen before?
So this organism is a member of a group that we call the radiodonts. The name basically means radial teeth because they have this very unique mouth part that
Okay.
looks nothing like anything that we have today. And these organisms, they are totally extinct, and we know that there is quite a diversity of them in the Cambrian period from prior fossil finds, but this particular species is unique in that it has a body that's broken up into multiple different groups of segments that are specialized for forming different functions.
That is so fascinating. So this is quite a discovery for you. So congratulations on that. And there is going to be a paper that is going to be released with details on your discovery. Thank you for sharing this with us. You're going back to do more research as well, right?
That's right. We're always searching for more fossils, and that includes both out in the field and in our own collections because we know that there's so many discoveries left to be made.
Cool. Well, thank you for sharing this with us. We really appreciate your time today.
Now, I found this article, this interview quite interesting because, well, I read lots. There are so many different fossils, antiquities of all sorts. Just you name it, from arrowheads to bones, just that are locked under key, buried in these museums. We're talking massive collections that have never really been gone over and scientifically broke down and compared. And now there's a lot of stories, and now this kind of happened with, and I've talked about this in a previous episode as well, with like the Clovis people. Now, for those of you who aren't into vast time history, for the longest time, people were like, "Oh, America never had humans on it. It was just this dead land." And it was only within the last 20 to 30 years that more and more people were finding this evidence that wasn't being kind of hushed up because it wasn't against the narrative. And one of the big ones is the fact that they were finding remnants of a certain type of a tool. And it was not necessarily that what they were using to make the tool separated it from anywhere else in the world. It's not like they had metallurgical skills, so they were, like making metal blades or anything. They weren't. They were still using the same type of rock, but it was how they were sharding the rock into a different type of a point for it to be affixed to a spear or an arrow. Now, there were actually findings of this in like the mid 1800s that it's nothing, we'll just bury that in the back because there were no humans back then, so it can't be that old. This must be just the indigenous that are running around within the last couple hundred years. And Well, now that all this is coming out, a lot of these people are bugging the Smithsonian and some of these other institutions saying, we need to see your collections. We need more data. I mean, they have found footprints that are 100,000 years old in the South States. We also know that Canada was under an average of 1.25 to 2 miles thick of ice. The idea, all of this old science, all of this old archaeology has been flipped on its tail. And of course, you get all these people. You get Graham Hancock. He's kind of in the. And what's funny is that they make him out to be like some, like complete conspiracy guy. He's not. He's kind of a centrist in this. He's removing himself from that old school, and he's using the data and a lot of the intellectuals around him in order to look at things differently, but also using things that have been kind of hidden from the people. And that's what I really liked about what this guy just did. So he was fortunate enough to be in Ontario working there and curious enough to start looking at some of these fossils that had never been broke down. They had never been genealogically put into their place. So they were just kind of packed. So we had all of these dead lines. Now this is something that's such a simple little species. But like he said, there's more of them than anything else on the planet. Like 80%. They fill the oceans. Without them, all life on Earth would be just gone. That's how important they are. And to see how they're changing throughout time, evolving, splitting, different species. By putting those together, you can answer a lot of the other building blocks and destructive blocks of things that have happened in order to coordinate geological things that have happened. So this may not seem very big. You probably saw the article going, Alias, that was pretty boring. This is a huge discovery because they're finding a unique species, but yet the adaptations somehow are the same on two completely different, separate, which at that time, millions of years ago, were completely different bodies of water. And millions of years of earth and thrust and pressures and now he's found them, and then he's realized that the other ones that have been buried into the back fit, and he's realized where the intersection of these are. So now he knows when a species, he's getting closer to being able to nail an exact time of when a species went extinct. So they've already seen one evolve. They haven't found any old enough to know when the one that went extinct first came around, but they've seen it in all of these different studies. And we're talking millions of years ago. Like, the science involved in this type of a discovery, mind-boggling. These people don't get enough credit for what they do. This is a huge discovery. So anyways, I just wanted to throw that out there because, like I said, this deals with everything. It may not seem like it, but it does. And by him coming forward and the media giving him the air, it's awakening more and more people to go, yeah, well, why are the zoos all locked, under key in all of these? How come they don't have access? How come they're not? Why are they just buried in there? These are things that we need to start opening. We need to start allowing the science to actually take place and get away from this blinder ideology that we know everything. We don't know crap. We don't know crap. I mean, there's people that think CO2 is like deadly. That tells you right there that humanity needs to wake up. Anyways, sorry, I'm a bit of a nerd. I had to play that. I when I saw it, I was just blown away by that because it's huge. It's huge. Now, on to some more news.
Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe is calling for all hands on deck approach to fighting the 16 wildfires burning in the province. The province is getting additional air support from Quebec, BC and Alaska as Saskatchewan continues to remain under a state of emergency.
Please, everyone in this province, just be very, very aware, very careful in all you're doing. If that is going into a zone where there may be active wildfires, to help or to retrieve, some of your property, is to be very careful. Check with the fire officials on your way. We have had instances where people have been caught. I know there are challenges with some of the decisions that unfortunately have had to be made in a situation where we just can't have another fire in northern Saskatchewan.
And joining me now is Weldon McCallum, a Peter Ballantine Cree Nation Emergency Evacuation Coordinator for the City of Prince Albert. He's also joined by Justin Halcrow, the PBC and Vice Chief. They have evacuated from the community of Pelican Narrows. Appreciate you joining us on the program, and thank you so much for taking out the time in an hour that must be so hard and challenging for all of you. Weldon, what is the situation like with the fires where you are right now?
We're actually in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. The fires are back in our home communities of Pelican Narrows. And so it's really a high time of stress for myself, the frontline staff, and as well as everybody else in the communities, because all of our homes are under the threat from the forest fires that we have. It's not only one fire that's threatening our communities, it's multiple fires that are joining together. And so the threat is really high and the stress levels are really high.
Weldon, talk to us about where you are at the moment. What are we seeing behind you? What's going on?
Right now, I'm at the Prince Albert Exhibition Center. And this is our main point. This is our main center where we're assisting our members and evacuees from all of the PBCN communities and surrounding areas. This is where we serve our hot meals. This is our donation drop-off center. As you can see behind me, all the donations that we've had from the cities, the local businesses, small businesses, private donations. We're so grateful for all the donations that we've had throughout the few days, and we don't know how long we're going to be here. So we're doing everything we can to keep our membership entertained and preoccupied. And, if they need supplies, they can come down here. If they need a hot meal, they can come down here. And,
right.
Yeah.
Weldon, can you give us an estimate of how many people you are helping at the moment? How many people have been evacuated from Pelican Narrows and surrounding areas?
There is about over 4,000 people that we have displaced from our communities. We have about over 700 of them in Prince Albert. We also have them in other cities like Saskatoon, Regina, Lloydminster, North Battleford. Because of the hotel rooms, we have to relocate a lot of our members to Saskatoon and so forth.
I know you're doing some really important work on the ground, so I won't keep you long. Weldon McCallum, Peter Ballantine Cree Nation Emergency Evacuation Coordinator for the City of Prince Albert. Thank you for your time and sharing this moment with us.
Yep, thank you, guys.
Keep up the good work there, guys. They need all help they can. Look into your areas if you're up in any of northern. If you're anywhere in the Prairie provinces, there's some serious fires going on. They definitely need help. If you can afford to donate, if you have space, open it up. If you have the time, see if you can volunteer. They need a lot of help. That's not looking good out there. And what's happened in Saskatchewan with a little bit of the winds that we had pass through, and even Alberta, which I'm going to dabble on here. This went through Edmonton. It amalgamated a lot of these smaller fires into supercells. They're so big they create their own weather system. These things are huge. You can't even get close to them without just disintegrating because the heat is so intense. Yeah. Anyways, this happened in Edmonton on Thursday.
household items flying in your backyard, and trees violently moving through the strong winds that hit the Edmonton region Thursday afternoon. So strong, Environment Canada issuing an emergency alert.
Within 30 seconds of me getting the warning, there was like a big dust devil coming right down the middle of White Avenue. Walked a bit further and I just went into Boston Pizza to get out of the rain that was coming. So
Edmontonians are out and about, calling it a frightening experience.
Everything in our backyard was safe and all that. Yeah. It was so bad. The rain got soaked everything through. I was so scared, actually.
Well, it's not often that you get something that says that there's potential to be like a tornado type thing. I've never had to live through that type of weather, so.
Edmonton's airport needing to divert flights to Calgary during the storm, recording winds up to 129 kilometers an hour.
We haven't seen wind gusts like this at Edmonton International for about 60 years. And so we will take what has happened here and ensure that everything we're doing is ensuring the safety and security of our passengers and team members and our structures here at the airport.
Passengers arriving in YEG Friday, stunned by the calm after seeing videos of those evacuated from the Oilers watch party.
when you see debris flying everywhere, I guess your initial thought is everybody okay? Are people getting struck by the things that are flying around? It was definitely something, after living in Edmonton, especially the past year, it's nothing I've seen before. So initial reaction is just hoping everyone's all right and nobody's getting struck with anything that's flying around.
Environment Canada says their threshold for a wind-related emergency alert is at 130 kilometers. A windstorm like this last recorded in 1960s.
Anytime there's a change in the weather pattern, we expect severe thunderstorm development across Alberta, and then of course you're right, the hazards would be usually strong winds and hail, and then the risk of a tornado.
Environment Canada says it's an important reminder to be aware of the possibility of severe weather and have a plan if they send out an emergency alert to go to a basement, or if you're outside, find a well-structured building to shelter in, even just your vehicle.
Yeah, that it was pretty scary actually. Like I said, I got family and friends that were down there, and they said it felt like a tornado. Now, if you're an Albertan or a prairie person, especially if you're from the Edmonton area, when you hear Black Friday, you don't think of the shopping sales. You think of a tornado that touched down a few decades ago, and we were actually quite fortunate. My family, we drove right through it. We were leaving the city to come to Saskatchewan to visit, and we missed it by like 2 hours. We drove, it was, and then when we were hearing it on the radio, and of course back then we never had the technology like this that we had, and we were hearing some kind of parts of it, this tornado had touched down, and it was kind of a scary thing, but it wasn't until we actually got to where we were going in Saskatchewan that we started seeing some of the footage on television, and we were just in shock because we had a family member that had stayed behind, and there wasn't the information wasn't near as fast as it was today. So yeah, there was a lot of worried people, and then to see the damages after. So a lot of the people who had lived through that, when this started to go down, we sure brought up a lot of those memories. And like I said, I got a lot of ties in Alberta, and of course being part of the whole prairies, a lot of the people around remembered it. So there were big fears that this could be something along that lines. And just thank God it was a plow wind kind of sort of gusty, nasty weather cell that went through, and it never ended up being anything really severe. Although I did hear that some areas got some nasty hail. I just haven't found any video of that yet. So we're going to move on here. Our last story, actually not our last, I got one little funny clip I'm going to put at the end. It's a learning lesson for children. But this kind of went down, and this is scary. This is just Canada. Oh my God.
It's a busy day at Earls Court Park, but parents remain on high alert after Toronto police released information about a suspicious man wanted for several disturbing incidents involving children at this park a day prior.
It does make it harder to kind of plan an evening, plan an outing out if you're worried about incidents like these, especially when you are with kids.
Toronto police have arrested and charged 35-year-old Leandro de Souza Barbosa of Toronto with 2 counts of assault and indecent act following reports of a suspicious incident at Earls Court Park Friday afternoon. Parents in the area Saturday say they're always keeping a watchful eye.
I'm always on high alert for my kids. No matter what, you got to keep a close eye on them now.
We train our kids to not talk to strangers, but you never know. So just keep an eye on them and I wouldn't let my 13-year-old come down here by themselves ever.
Investigators say while an elementary school soccer tournament took place at the park located in the St. Clair Avenue and Caledonia Road area Friday afternoon, the suspect allegedly approached a child and picked them up and placed them on his shoulders. He was also seen allegedly filming children and asking them for personal information. Later, he allegedly was seen standing near the playground committing an indecent act.
It's disheartening and a bit startling to hear. It's unfortunate. I think the city is kind of dealing with a lot of things right now, but that's shocking.
Police also allege the suspect grabbed a child by the arm and asked them to come with him. That child was able to escape and the suspect fled the area, leading to a bigger, scarier question. How do parents keep their children safe?
Some of the things we suggest are role playing with your child and asking them, like, what would you do in this situation? And then teaching them to make a lot of noise and to try their best to escape.
Hung says it's important to teach your children to be on the lookout for strange behavior and to remember that adults don't generally ask children for help.
It's okay to say no to an adult. Because lots of times we teach them to be respectful and to not say no, but they need to know if their instincts are telling them something, then it's okay to say no.
Hung also recommends implementing a family passcode.
So that if someone tries to say, oh, your mom sent me to pick you up, they can ask, well, what's the passcode? And it has to be something that the kids will remember.
And for the older kids, Hung says stay off your phones and pay attention to your surroundings. Police say Barbosa is scheduled to appear in court Sunday morning. For more information on how to keep your children safe, visit mcsc.ca. At Earls Court Park,
wow.
Rianne.
Scary times. It's not good. And this type of stuff is just getting worse and worse and worse every day in Canada. And there's some numbers that are coming out that they're saying so far 870,000 migrants since the beginning of this year have flooded the country. I'm still waiting to find absolute proof before I do any verifications on it. But from what I am finding, it's looking like our numbers are right back up to what Trudeau was trying to do with the Century Initiative. And this is literally to flood and remove Canadianism from this country. Flood it. And with that comes chaos, division, and the favoritism of the government that's allowing these people to come in unvetted. This is it's disgusting. Like I said, I'm paying a close eye to it. I'm waiting to see more and more confirmations on numbers, especially with the rollout from the government. Not like anything they say is true anyways, but at least you got documents you can go by. Anyways, our last story here. This is just a quick little clip. It's quite funny. Call it a life lesson for kids. They cocoon to butterfly, and then they let it free. And this is what happened.
There he goes!
I'm gonna have to mute this. Here comes the bird. There goes the butterfly. And the kid's voice is, oh. Oh, too funny. Too funny. The fact that it's caught on camera makes it all that much better. Oh, priceless. Absolutely priceless. Well, you guys, I'm calling that an episode. I hope you guys are having a fabulous weekend. Make sure you check out our merch. I'm probably going to start rolling out. I'm working on already a first members only video with this whole new membership program that I was forced to start. And other than that, enjoy the rest of your weekend. You've been watching the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm your host, Alias Tagai. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And if you haven't, please do. And if you haven't hit the notification key, please hit that, because you won't miss any future episodes, and it also helps me grow my channel. So works both ways. Until next time, you guys, stay informed.